The transport ship descended through layers of shimmering atmosphere, breaking through clouds that sparkled like diamonds. Ambassador Marcus Chen pressed his face against the viewport, watching as the crystal palace of the Zinthara Empire came into view. It rose from the planet's surface like a massive geometric flower, each petal made of transparent material that caught and refracted the light of 3 distant suns. "Beautiful, isn't it?" said Commander Sarah Park, standing beside him. "Hard to believe we're heading into what might be the most important negotiation in human history." Marcus nodded, straightening his diplomatic uniform. 6 months ago, humanity had made first contact with the Galactic Council. 6 months of learning that humans were considered primitive, emotional, and frankly, a bit embarrassing by the standards of ancient civilizations. The Zinthara Empire alone had existed for over 50,000 years. They had conquered half the known galaxy, not through warfare, but through perfect strategy and calculated alliances. And now, for reasons nobody quite understood, they had invited Earth to negotiate a treaty. The ship landed on a platform that seemed to be made of solid light. Marcus stepped out, flanked by his security team and diplomatic staff. The air smelled strange, like copper and mint mixed together. A group of Zinthara officials waited to greet them. Marcus had seen images, but seeing them in person was different. The Zinthara stood about 7 feet tall, with sleek exoskeletons that shifted colors like oil on water. Their faces were angular, with large, multifaceted eyes that reflected everything around them. They moved with perfect precision, not a single wasted motion. "Ambassador Chen," one of them said, their voice somehow coming from their chest rather than their mouth. "Welcome to the heart of the Empire. I am Advisor KX then. Queen X Irathia sends her regrets that she cannot greet you personally. She is occupied with matters of state." Marcus smiled and extended his hand. The advisor looked at it for a long moment before carefully touching it with 3 fingers. The gesture seemed mechanical, calculated. "I understand completely," Marcus said. "When might I have the honor of meeting Her Majesty?" "That will be determined." Cakes then replied, "Come. We have prepared quarters for you and your staff." The palace interior was even more stunning than the outside. Walls seemed to shift and change, displaying star maps and data streams. Everything was precise, ordered, perfect. Marcus noticed that every Zinthara they passed moved in the same efficient way. There was no casual conversation, no laughter, no signs of anything he would recognize as emotion. Over the next 3 days, Marcus met with various advisors and ministers. They discussed trade routes, technology exchanges, and defensive pacts. But Queen Irathia never appeared. Every time Marcus requested an audience, he received the same response. The Queen was busy. The Queen sent her regrets. The Queen would meet with him soon. On the 4th day, Marcus was walking through one of the palace gardens, a strange place where crystalline plants grew in mathematically perfect spirals, when he saw her for the first time. She stood on a balcony 3 levels above him, taller than the other Zinthara. Her exoskeleton a deeper shade of blue-black. Even from a distance, Marcus could tell she was watching him. Their eyes met for just a moment. Then she turned and disappeared back into the palace. It happened again the next day. Marcus was in a meeting with Advisor KX, then when he caught a glimpse of the Queen through a transparent wall. She was in an adjacent chamber, and once again, she seemed to be observing him. The moment he looked up, she moved away. "Is something wrong?" KX then asked, noticing his distraction. "I just thought I saw the Queen," Marcus said carefully. "Her Majesty often observes diplomatic proceedings," the advisor replied. "But she prefers to maintain distance during initial negotiations." By the end of the first week, Marcus was certain something strange was happening. The other alien diplomats, representatives from a dozen different species, began whispering among themselves. The human delegation was being treated differently, kept at arm's length in a way that seemed almost deliberate. Commander Park pulled him aside one evening. Marcus, the others are saying we're being insulted. That the Queen's refusal to meet with you is a sign she doesn't take Earth seriously. It doesn't feel like an insult, Marcus said thoughtfully. It feels like avoidance. What's the difference? An insult is about showing contempt. Avoidance is about fear. He decided to test his theory. The palace had public areas where the Queen occasionally walked, ceremonial spaces, where citizens could observe their monarch from a distance. Marcus began spending time in these areas, always seeming to be there by coincidence. And every time, the Queen would appear, see him, and change direction. On the 10th day, Marcus had had enough. He studied the Queen's schedule, which was publicly available, another sign of the Zinthara's obsession with order and transparency. He knew she meditated in a specific garden every evening at the same time. It was a public space, but one rarely visited. Marcus went there early and waited. When Queen Xyrathia entered the garden, she froze. They were alone, and there was nowhere for her to retreat without making it obvious she was fleeing. Marcus stood up slowly, keeping his movements calm and non-threatening. "Your Majesty," he said, "I apologize for the ambush, but I need to speak with you." The Queen remained still, her multifaceted eyes reflecting the garden's bioluminescent plants. Up close, Marcus could see that her exoskeleton was covered in intricate patterns, markings that denoted her rank and achievements over 3 centuries of rule. "Ambassador Chen," she said, her voice different from the others in Thara, deeper, with subtle harmonics that made his chest vibrate. "This is inappropriate. With respect, Your Majesty, what's inappropriate is conducting negotiations through intermediaries, when both our species know that real treaties require direct communication between leaders." Marcus took a breath. "I need to know why you're avoiding me. Is it something I did? Something about humanity that offends you? Because if we're going to fail at this alliance, I'd at least like to know why." The Queen was silent for a long moment. Then, slowly, she moved closer. Even her walk was different from the others in Thara, less mechanical, more fluid. "You have done nothing wrong, Ambassador," she said finally. "The problem is not with you. The problem is with what you are." End quote. "I don't understand." "No, you wouldn't." She seemed to struggle with something, her exoskeleton shifting colors in a way Marcus had never seen before. "Tell me, Ambassador Chen, do you know why the Zinthara Empire has lasted 50,000 years? Strategy? Technology? Organizational efficiency? Logic," the Queen said. "Pure, perfect logic. Thousands of years ago, my ancestors discovered that emotions were inefficient. They clouded judgment, led to poor decisions, caused conflicts that served no purpose. So we evolved beyond them. We removed emotions from our species through genetic modification and cultural reinforcement. Every Zinthara is taught from birth to think, never to feel." Marcus felt a chill run down his spine. "You don't feel anything?" "We did not," the Queen corrected, "until we met your species." She turned away from him, looking up at the alien stars visible through the garden's transparent dome. "Humans are different from every other species in the known galaxy, Ambassador. You produce biochemical signatures, pheromones, electromagnetic fields. We're still studying them that trigger responses in other species, responses that had long been dormant in us. When I first reviewed your profile, studied recordings of your speeches, your interviews, I felt something I had no words for. Curiosity, interest, a desire to see you in person, 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 a desire to see you in person." Marcus's heart was beating faster. "And that's bad?" The Queen finally looked at him again. And for the first time, he thought he could see something in those alien eyes. Something that might have been fear. "Ambassador Chen, I am 317 years old. I have ruled this empire with perfect logic, making decisions that affect trillions of lives across thousands of worlds. I have never made a choice based on emotion. I have never been compromised by personal feelings. She paused. Until now. The more I am near you, the more I feel these sensations. They grow stronger each day. And I realize that if I continued to expose myself to your presence, I would eventually fall in love with me. Marcus finished, understanding flooding through him. Yes, the Queen said simply. And I cannot afford to fall in love with you, Ambassador Chen. Because if I do, I will no longer be able to rule my people as they need. I will be compromised, vulnerable, human. The garden was silent, except for the soft humming of alien insects. Marcus took a step forward. Your Majesty. But before she could answer, alarms began blaring throughout the palace. The Queen's eyes widened, the first truly spontaneous expression Marcus had seen from any Zinthara. They know, she whispered. They know I've been alone with you. And suddenly, everything changed. The alarms echoed through the Crystal Palace like the screaming of a wounded beast. Marcus watched as Queen Xyrithia's exoskeleton flickered through colors he had never seen before, deep purples mixed with flashes of orange. If he had to guess, he would say, she looked panicked. We need to move, she said, grabbing his arm with surprising strength. Before Marcus could ask questions, a squad of Zinthara guards burst into the garden. But these were different from the officials he had met. They wore armor that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it, and they carried weapons that hummed with dangerous energy. Your Majesty, the lead guard said, his voice flat and emotionless. Step away from the human. The High Council has declared an emergency session. On whose authority? The Queen demanded, and Marcus heard something new in her voice. Anger. Real, genuine anger. On the authority of the Empire's survival protocols, the guard replied. You have been exposed to a biological contaminant. The human must be quarantined immediately, and you must undergo decontamination procedures. Marcus felt his stomach drop. Wait. Biological contaminant? I'm not sick. I passed all your medical screenings. You misunderstand, Ambassador. Came a new voice. Advisor KX then emerged from behind the guards, and for the first time, Marcus saw something like satisfaction in the alien's bearing. The contamination is not a disease, it is what you are. Humanity itself is the problem. The Queen moved to stand between Marcus and the guards. Explain yourself. Advisor. Your Majesty, surely you have felt it. KX then moved closer, his movements precise and calculated. The confusion. The strange sensations. The inability to calculate probabilities with your usual precision. These are symptoms of emotional contamination. A. 2. M. 2. A. Marcus looked at the Queen, then back at the advisor. You're saying that humans make other species feel emotions? Not just any emotions, Ambassador. Humans trigger the reawakening of dormant emotional centers in species that have evolved beyond such primitive responses. K. Then gestured to the Queen. Her Majesty has been compromised. In just 10 days of indirect exposure to your presence, she has begun exhibiting emotional responses. Direct contact, as she foolishly allowed tonight, accelerates the process exponentially. The Queen's exoskeleton was now flickering between colors rapidly. Marcus realized he was seeing her internal struggle made visible, logic fighting against these new feelings she couldn't control. How long have you known? She asked quietly. Since the 3rd day. KX then replied. We noticed the changes in your behavior patterns. The slight hesitations in your decisions. The way you kept reviewing Ambassador Chen's files. We hoped you would maintain discipline and keep your distance. But you failed. So you set a trap, Marcus said, understanding. You knew she came to this garden every evening. You were monitoring us. Ever. Of course. The High Council must protect the Empire, even from its own queen when necessary. Cakes then turned to the guards. Take the human to containment. Her Majesty will come with us for immediate treatment. No, the queen said. That single word seemed to freeze everyone in place. Marcus had never heard such force in her voice before. Your Majesty, Cakes then said carefully, you are not thinking clearly. The emotional contamination is teaching me things you have forgotten, the queen interrupted. She turned to look at Marcus, and he saw something in her alien eyes that made his heart race. Ambassador Chen asked me a question before you arrived. He asked if being human was truly a weakness. She faced her advisor again. I have ruled for 317 years with perfect logic. I have made every decision based on calculations, probabilities, and strategic advantage. And in all that time, I never questioned whether that was right. I simply accepted it as the way things had always been. Because it is right, KX then insisted. Emotions lead to chaos, to war, to suffering. Our ancestors understood this. They saved our species by eliminating these dangerous impulses. Did they? The queen's voice was softer now, but no less powerful. Or did they eliminate something essential? Ambassador Chen, tell me, how do humans make decisions in crisis? Marcus glanced at the guards, who had their weapons trained on him, then back at the queen. Well, we use logic and analysis, of course. But we also use intuition, gut, feelings. Sometimes we make choices because they feel right, even when the numbers say otherwise. And has that served your species well? We're still here, Marcus said with a slight smile. We've survived wars, plagues, near extinctions. Not just because we could calculate odds, but because we refused to give up even when logic said we should. Because we cared enough about each other to fight for survival. The queen nodded slowly. In the past 10 days, I have experienced more than calculation. I have felt curiosity about the ambassador's world. I have felt interest in his stories. And tonight, when he asked his question, I felt something else. Hope. The possibility that there might be another way to exist. This is exactly the kind of compromised thinking we feared, Cakeston said. He signaled to the guards. Restrain them both. But as the guards moved forward, the queen did something that shocked everyone. She moved between Marcus and the weapons. Her body language protective, rather than regal. It was not a calculated strategic position. It was pure instinct. Stand down, she commanded. The guards hesitated, caught between their queen's orders and the High Council's authority. In that moment of confusion, Marcus saw their chance. Your Majesty. The garden, does it connect to the lower levels? The queen understood immediately. She grabbed his hand, another spontaneous gesture, and pulled him toward a section of the garden where crystalline plants grew thickest. Behind them, KX then shouted orders, and the guards opened fire. Energy bolts scorched the air above their heads as they dove into the plant growth. The queen pressed her hand against what looked like solid ground, and suddenly a hidden door opened beneath them. They fell through darkness, sliding down a smooth tunnel that seemed to go on forever. They landed in water or something like water. It glowed with soft blue light and felt warm against Marcus's skin. They were in some kind of underground reservoir, surrounded by ancient stone walls covered in writing Marcus couldn't read. The old city, the queen said, pulling herself out of the water onto a stone platform. These tunnels were built before the Great Reformation, before we eliminated emotions from our society. They are not on any modern maps. Marcus climbed out beside her, dripping and breathing hard. You knew about them? Every queen learns the palace's secrets, she said. But I never thought I would use them to escape my own people. They sat in silence for a moment, catching their breath. The sounds of the alarm were distant now, muffled by layers of stone and crystal. In the soft blue light, Marcus could see the queen's exoskeleton had settled into a deep indigo color. She looked exhausted, Your Majesty, I'm sorry. I never meant to cause you problems. Zerathia, she said quietly. My name is Zerathia. I think we are past formal titles now. Marcus smiled. Marcus. Just Marcus. She looked at him with those multifaceted eyes. Marcus. I need to understand something. This feeling I have when I look at you, this warmth in my chest, this desire to be near you, this fear when I thought you might be harmed. Humans call this attraction, yes? Yes, Marcus said softly. Some might call it the beginning of love. Love. She repeated the word like she was tasting it. We have records of it from before the Reformation. Ancient texts describe it as the most powerful force in the universe. More powerful than logic or strategy or any weapon ever created. My ancestors feared it so much they eliminated it from our entire species. Why? What were they so afraid of? Zerathia stood and walked to one of the walls, running her fingers over the ancient writing. I am beginning to understand. Love makes you vulnerable. It makes you care about something more than your own survival or success. It makes you act in ways that logic cannot explain. She turned back to him. Like throwing yourself between someone you barely know and armed guards, risking your throne and your life, simply because the thought of them being hurt causes you pain. Marcus stood and walked to her. That doesn't sound like weakness to me. That sounds like courage. Does it? Her voice was uncertain. The High Council would say I have been compromised, that I am no longer fit to rule, because I cannot make purely logical decisions. Then maybe the High Council is wrong about what makes a good ruler. Before Zerathia could respond, they heard sounds echoing through the tunnels. Footsteps. Many of them. They are searching for us, she said. These tunnels are vast, but eventually they will find us. We need a plan, Marcus thought quickly. Your embassy, the human delegation. If we can reach them, you would be under Earth's protection. It would cause a diplomatic incident if they tried to take you by force. That assumes your species would risk war with the Zinthara Empire to protect a queen who has already been declared compromised. You'd be surprised what humans will do when we believe something is right, even when the odds are against us. Marcus smiled. That emotional decision-making you're so worried about? It cuts both ways. Zerathia looked at him for a long moment. Then, slowly, deliberately, she reached out and took his hand. The gesture was clumsy. She had never held hands with anyone before, but the intention was clear. Then we go together, she said. And I will learn what it means to make decisions with the heart instead of just the head. SK. They moved deeper into the tunnels. The sounds of pursuit growing louder behind them. And for the first time in 300 years, Queen Zerathia felt something she had no words for, something that made her grip Marcus's hand tighter as they ran through the darkness. It felt like hope. The tunnels beneath the Crystal Palace were like a maze from another age. Water dripped from the ceiling, and the walls glowed with patches of bioluminescent moss that created pools of soft green light in the darkness. Marcus and Zerathia moved as quietly as they could, but every footstep seemed to echo forever in the stone passages. How far to the surface? Marcus whispered. I am not certain, Zerathia admitted. These maps were memorized centuries ago. The city has changed since then. They turned a corner and found themselves in a larger chamber. Ancient pillars rose toward a ceiling lost in shadow, and on the walls were carved images that Marcus found fascinating. They showed Zinthara, but different from the ones he knew. These carved figures were embracing, dancing, and their faces seemed to show expressions. What is this place? He asked. Zerathia approached one of the walls, her fingers tracing the carvings. A temple. From before the Reformation. Her voice carried a strange quality sadness, Marcus realized. She was feeling sadness. Look at them, she continued. My ancestors. before they decided that emotions were weakness. They look so alive. Marcus stood beside her, studying the images. What happened? Why did they change? There was a war, Girithia explained. Thousands of years ago. The Zinthara were divided into factions, and emotion-driven conflicts brought our species to the edge of extinction. Leaders made decisions based on pride, on revenge, on jealousy. Millions died. Finally, the survivors decided that the only way to prevent future wars was to eliminate the source of conflict itself. They eliminated emotions, Marcus said. They called it the Great Reformation. Scientists developed genetic modifications. Parents raised children in strict emotional suppression. Within a few generations, the Zinthara became what you see today. Logical, efficient, peaceful. She paused. Empty. A sound echoed through the tunnels, voices calling out in the Zinthara language. The search parties were getting closer. We need to keep moving, Marcus said, but Zirathia did not move. She was staring at a particular carving, two Zinthara facing each other, their hands touching in what looked like an intimate gesture. Marcus, she said quietly. It was the first time she had admitted it so directly. Marcus took her hand, and this time, she squeezed back with more confidence. Fear means you have something worth protecting, he said. That is not weakness. She looked at him, and in the green glow of the moss, he could see her exoskeleton shifting colors again. When you hold my hand, when you stand close to me, there is a warmth, a sense of connection. Is this what humans call happiness? Marcus smiled. I think so. And for what it is worth, I feel it too. Even though I am so different from you, even though my face is not like yours, my body is alien to you, beauty is not about looking the same, Marcus said. It is about connection. Understanding. Caring about someone beyond logic or reason. For a moment, they simply stood there in the ancient temple, surrounded by images of a lost civilization that had once known how to feel. Then, Zirathia did something that surprised them both. She leaned forward, pressing her forehead gently against his, a gesture that felt right even though she had never done it before. I think I am beginning to understand what my ancestors lost, she whispered. The voices in the tunnels were very close now. Marcus reluctantly pulled back. We really need to go. Quote, they ran through more passages, taking turns that Girithia chose based on half-remembered knowledge and something else, intuition. Several times Marcus wanted to go one way, but Zirathia insisted on another direction, following a feeling she could not explain. How do you know which way to go? He asked after the third time. Her instinct proved correct. I do not know, she admitted. I simply feel that this is right. Is this what intuition is like for humans? Exactly like that. You are learning fast. They emerged into a larger tunnel, where water flowed in a channel along the floor. Strange, fish-like creatures swam in the current, glowing with their own internal light. Zirathia stopped suddenly, watching them. I have never noticed how beautiful they are, she said with wonder in her voice. I knew they existed in these tunnels from reports and data, but I never actually looked at them, never appreciated them. That is what emotions do, Marcus said gently. They help you see beauty, not just facts. Behind them, the sound of pursuit grew suddenly louder. A guard shouted. They had found their trail. Run, Marcus urged, pulling Zirathia forward. They splashed through the shallow water, the glowing fish scattering around their feet. The tunnel ahead split into 3 directions. Which way? Marcus asked urgently. Zirathia hesitated, and he could see her struggling. The old her would calculate probabilities, analyze terrain, make a logical choice. But there was no time for calculation now. Left, she said suddenly, choosing on pure instinct. They raced down the left tunnel just as guards appeared behind them. Energy weapons fired, missing them by inches. The tunnel began to slope upward, and Marcus felt his lungs burning with the effort of running. Then, suddenly, there was light ahead. Real light, not the glow of moss or luminescent creatures. They burst out of a hidden exit into what looked like an abandoned area of the city. Old buildings surrounded them, structures from before the modern crystal architecture of the palace. And there, just 3 blocks away, Marcus could see it, the human embassy, with Earth's flag flying above it. "We made it," he gasped, bending over to catch his breath. But Zirathia was not celebrating. She was looking up at the sky, where ships were gathering, dozens of them, all bearing the symbols of the High Council. "They have surrounded your embassy," she said. "They knew we would come here." Marcus watched as more ships arrived, forming a complete blockade around the building. His communicator buzzed, and he answered it. "Marcus!" Commander Park's voice was urgent. "What is happening?" "The Zinthara fleet has us completely surrounded. They are demanding we hand over the Queen. They are saying she has been compromised by human biological weapons and must be detained for the safety of the Empire." "Sarah, she is not compromised. She is just learning to feel. There is a difference. Try telling that to the 100 warships pointing weapons at us." "Marcus, I do not know how much longer I can hold them off. Even Earth is not ready to go to war with an empire this powerful." Zirathia took the communicator from Marcus's hand. "Commander Park, this is Queen Zirathia. I am making a formal request for asylum." There was a long pause. "Your Majesty, with all respect, granting you asylum would be an act of war. I understand. But I must also tell you something. My High Council believes that emotions make rulers weak. They believe that I am now unfit to lead because I have begun to feel. But I have learned something in these past hours that 300 years of logic never taught me." "What is that, Your Majesty?" "That caring about something beyond calculations makes you stronger, not weaker. That intuition can guide you when logic fails. That connection between beings, what humans call love, is not a biological weapon. It is the most powerful force in the universe." She looked at Marcus as she spoke. "I will not let them take that away from me. I will not let them suppress my people's emotions for another 50,000 years." Marcus stared at her. "What are you saying?" Zirathia turned to face him fully. "I am saying that I am done hiding. I am done running. If my people are going to learn that emotions are not weakness, then I must show them. I must share what I have learned, even if it costs me everything." "They will never let you broadcast from here," Marcus said. "The Council controls all communications." "Not all communications." Zirathia's exoskeleton shifted to a determined deep blue. "The ancient temple we passed through it had old broadcasting equipment. From before the Reformation, when our people used to share stories and feelings across the Empire. If it still works, I can reach every Zinthara, on every world, simultaneously." "That is a huge if," Marcus said. "And we would have to get back through those tunnels, past all those guards." "I know." Zirathia took both of his hands in hers. "I am asking you to trust me, to help me, to risk everything on something that logic says is impossible." Marcus looked into her alien eyes and saw something he never thought he would see in a Zinthara: hope, determination, and something else. Something that made his own heart beat faster. "That is the most human thing I have ever heard you say," he said with a smile. "Let us do it." Commander Park's voice came through the communicator. "Marcus, what are you planning?" "Something crazy, Sarah. Something that only works if you believe in it more than you fear it. Can you buy us time? Create a distraction? Create a distraction. Create a distraction. 1. How much time? 1 hour. Maybe 2. You are asking for a miracle." "No," Marcus said, looking at Zirathia. "I am asking you to believe that sometimes emotions and hope can achieve what logic says is impossible. Very human of me, right?" There was a pause. Then Sarah laughed. Very human indeed. All right. Ambassador. We will give you your miracle. But you better make it count. Marcus and Zerathia turned back toward the tunnel entrance. Above them, the ships continued to gather. Behind them, their only chance waited in an ancient temple deep underground. Are you ready? Marcus asked. Zerathia squeezed his hand. I am terrified. But yes, I am ready. Is it strange that fear and courage can exist at the same time? Not strange at all, Marcus said. That is what being alive really means. Together, they descended back into the darkness, heading toward a future that logic said was impossible, but that their hearts believed in completely. The journey back through the tunnels was more dangerous than before. Zerathia and Marcus could hear guards in every passage, their voices echoing off the ancient stone walls. But the Queen was changing. Her movements were no longer the calculated precision of a Zinthara. She moved with purpose, with determination, with something that looked almost like courage born from desperation. Left here, she whispered, pulling Marcus down a narrow corridor. I remember now. The temple is close. How can you be sure? Marcus asked, following her through the darkness. I cannot be sure, but I feel it. She glanced back at him, and even in the dim light, he could see her exoskeleton flickering with colors he was learning to read. Blue, for determination, purple for uncertainty, and something golden that appeared when she looked at him, something he hoped was affection. They turned another corner and suddenly faced 3 guards blocking their path. The Zinthara soldiers raised their weapons immediately. Your Majesty, you must return to the palace, the lead guard said. The council has ordered your immediate treatment. The human contamination must be reversed before permanent damage occurs. Zerathia stepped forward, placing herself between Marcus and the weapons. Tell me, Guard Captain ZX, nor do you remember your oath when you joined the Royal Guard? The guard seemed confused by the question. To protect the Queen and the Empire, with logic and discipline. No, Zerathia said firmly. That is what the Council teaches now. But the original oath, the one from 5,000 years ago, was different. I have read the ancient texts. The oath was to protect the Queen and her people with courage and loyalty. Not logic. Courage. Do you know the difference? The guard hesitated. Marcus could see the confusion in his posture. Courage is an emotional concept, Your Majesty. It has no place in courage is standing for what is right, even when you are afraid. Zerathia interrupted. I am asking you now, ZX Nor. Are you afraid? Afraid of what the Council will do if you let me pass? Afraid of what will happen to the Empire if I succeed? The guard's weapon wavered slightly. I do not understand what is happening to me, Your Majesty. My chest feels tight. My thoughts are confused. Is this the human contamination? It is called fear, Zerathia said gently. And it is not contamination. It is awakening. You are beginning to feel again, ZX Nor. Just as our ancestors felt before the Reformation. Stole it from us. The other 2 guards looked at each other uncertainly. One of them lowered his weapon slightly. Your Majesty, the 3rd guard said. If we let you pass, the Council will execute us for treason. I know, Zerathia said, and I am asking you to risk that anyway, not because logic demands it, but because deep inside, in places you have forgotten existed, you know that what the Council is doing is wrong. You know that suppressing emotions has not made us stronger. It has made us hollow. The temple chamber fell silent, except for the distant sound of running water. Marcus held his breath, watching the guards struggle with concepts they had been taught to reject their entire lives. Finally, Guard Captain ZX Nor lowered his weapon completely. I do not understand what is happening inside me, Your Majesty. But you are right. Something feels wrong about stopping you. Go. We will tell the council we lost your trail. Zerathia reached out and touched the guard's shoulder, a gesture that shocked all of them. Physical contact was rare among the Zinthara outside of necessity. Thank you, ZX Nor. What you are feeling is called compassion. Hold on to it. Share it with others. Help them remember. The guard stepped aside, and Marcus and Zerathia hurried past them. As they rounded the corner, Marcus heard one of the guards say to the others, "Did you feel that? When she touched me. It was warm." They reached the ancient temple chamber minutes later. The carvings on the walls seemed to glow brighter now, as if the stone itself was responding to their presence. Zerathia went directly to what looked like a solid wall and pressed her hand against a specific symbol. A section of the wall slid open, revealing equipment that was clearly ancient but still humming with power. Screens flickered to life, showing symbols in an old version of the Zinthara language. The broadcasting system, Zerathia breathed. It still works. Marcus looked at the equipment. Can you operate it? I think so. The interface is primitive, but the principles are the same. She began working with the controls, her fingers moving across the screens. This system was designed to reach every Zinthara in the Empire simultaneously, for sharing important cultural moments, ceremonies, celebrations, things we no longer have. 1. How long do you need? Marcus asked, keeping watch on the entrance. 5 minutes to establish the connection. Then, I will have perhaps 10 minutes before the council traces the signal and shuts it down. She looked at him. 10 minutes to convince an entire empire that everything they have believed for thousands of years is wrong. No pressure, Marcus said with a slight smile. Zerathia worked quickly, and Marcus watched as the screens showed connections being established across countless worlds. Millions of receivers activating. Billions of Zinthara who would hear their queen's message. Ready, she said finally. A recording indicator appeared on the main screen. Marcus, I do not know if I can do this. What if I am wrong? What if emotions truly are dangerous? What if I destroy my empire? Marcus took her hands. Do you remember what you felt when those guards had their weapons pointed at me in the garden? Yes. Terror. I could not bear the thought of you being hurt. And what did you do? I stepped between you and the weapons. Exactly. You acted to protect someone you cared about, even though logic said you should save yourself. That is not weakness, Zerathia. That is the strongest thing I have ever seen. He squeezed her hands. Trust what you feel. Your people need to hear it. Zerathia looked at him for a long moment, then nodded. She turned to the screen and activated the broadcast. Across the Empire, on 1,000 worlds, in millions of homes and workplaces and ships, every screen suddenly displayed the same image. Queen Zerathia, standing in an ancient temple, with a human by her side. My people, she began, and her voice carried to every corner of her vast empire. I am speaking to you from a place our ancestors built 5,000 years ago. Before the Great Reformation. Before we chose logic over feeling. Before we decided that emotions were weakness. She paused. And Marcus saw her exoskeleton shifting through colors. Nervousness. Determination. Hope. For 317 years, I have ruled you with perfect logic. I have made every decision based on calculations and probabilities. I have been the ideal Zinthara leader, cold, efficient, emotionless. On worlds across the Empire, Zinthara stopped their work to watch. In the palace above, the High Council stared at screens in shock and rage. But 10 days ago, I met Ambassador Marcus Chen of Earth, and something changed. The humans produce biochemical signatures that awaken dormant emotional centers in our brains. Centers that were not removed, only suppressed. And slowly, I began to feel things I had no names for. Zerathia's voice grew stronger. I felt curiosity when I learned about his world. I felt interest when he told me stories of human courage and sacrifice. I felt fear when I realized the council would see this as contamination. And I felt something else, something our ancestors called love, when I looked at him and wanted nothing more than to protect him, even at the cost of my throne. She turned slightly, and the camera showed Marcus standing beside her. The council calls this contamination. They say emotions make rulers weak. They want to suppress what is happening to me, to restore me to pure logic. But I am here to tell you that they are wrong. Marcus watched as Zerathia transformed before his eyes and before her entire empire. She was no longer the cold, calculating queen. She was someone fighting for truth with everything she had. In the past 10 days, I have experienced more life than in 300 years of logical rule. I have felt joy at discovering beauty I never noticed before. I have felt courage when I had to act on instinct rather than calculation. I have felt connection with another being that goes beyond any strategic alliance. Her exoskeleton began to glow brighter, colors swirling across its surface. And yes, I have felt fear and pain and uncertainty. But even these difficult emotions have taught me something our ancestors knew: that feeling deeply is not weakness. It is what makes life worth living. On the screens, Marcus could see reactions from across the empire. Some Zinthara looked confused. Others seemed distressed. But many were touching their chests, their faces, as if feeling something new stirring inside them. I am not asking you to abandon logic, Zerathia continued. Logic has its place. But our ancestors were wrong to eliminate emotions entirely. The answer is not pure logic or pure emotion. It is balance. It is using both heart and mind together. She took a deep breath. I am asking each of you to make a choice. You can continue as you are safe, logical, emotionless, or you can open yourselves to feeling again. It will be difficult. It will be confusing. It will hurt sometimes. But I promise you, it will also be beautiful. I am choosing to feel, she said firmly. I am choosing to love this human who has shown me what our people lost. I am choosing to rule with both logic and compassion. The broadcast timer showed 30 seconds remaining before the council would shut it down. Join me, Zerathia said. Her voice filled with passion Marcus had never heard from any Zinthara. Choose to feel. Choose to live. Choose to remember what our ancestors knew before fear made them forget. We are not meant to be machines. We are meant to be alive. The screen went dark as the council cut the signal. For a moment, the temple was completely silent. Then Marcus's communicator exploded with incoming messages. Commander Park's voice came through, excited and confused. Marcus, you need to see this. Zinthara across the empire are. They are crying. They are laughing. They are calling their families. It is chaos, but it is beautiful chaos. Zerathia collapsed against Marcus, exhausted. He held her steady, feeling her trembling. Did I do the right thing? She whispered. Look, Marcus said, pointing to the ancient screens. They were showing feeds from across the empire, and what they saw took their breath away. Zinthara were embracing each other. Some were sitting alone, experiencing tears for the first time in their lives. Others were gathering in groups, talking animatedly, their exoskeletons shifting through colors that had not been seen in thousands of years. The revolution had begun, not with weapons or strategies, but with hearts finally allowed to feel again. Retriane the temple shook with distant explosions. The High Council was not giving up without a fight. Through the ancient screens, Marcus and Zerathia watched as the empire descended into chaos. But it was not the destructive chaos the council feared. It was the chaos of awakening. We need to move, Marcus said, helping Zerathia to her feet. The council will send forces here any moment. But Zerathia was watching the screens, her exoskeleton glowing with colors that shifted between hope and concern. "Look at them, Marcus. My people are confused, frightened, but they are also curious. They want to understand these new feelings." On one screen, they saw a Zinthara family holding each other for the first time in generations. On another, workers in a factory had stopped their tasks to simply talk with one another, sharing experiences they had never discussed before. And on a third screen, something remarkable was happening. Members of the Royal Guard were lowering their weapons, refusing the Council's orders to suppress the awakening citizens. "Your Majesty." Guard Captain ZX Nor's voice came through Marcus's communicator. "The palace is in turmoil. Half the military refuses to follow the Council's orders. They are saying they felt something when they heard your broadcast. They are asking questions we were never trained to answer." "Where is the High Council?" Zerathia asked, barricaded in the throne room. "They have loyalists with them, but their numbers are shrinking by the hour. Your Majesty, what should we do?" Zerathia looked at Marcus. He could see the struggle in her eyes, the old instinct to calculate the perfect strategic response, fighting against something newer, something that came from her awakening heart. "What do you think I should do?" she asked him softly. "I think you should do what feels right," Marcus said. "Not what logic demands. What does your heart tell you?" Zerathia closed her eyes for a moment. When she opened them, they were filled with determination. "Captain ZX Nor, tell everyone to stand down. No violence. No force. I will return to the palace, and I will face the Council, but not with weapons, with truth. Your Majesty, they will try to capture you, to force treatment on you." "Let them try," Zerathia said, and Marcus heard steel in her voice. "But I do not think they will succeed. Not anymore." They made their way back through the tunnels. But this time, they were not alone. Guards who had heard the broadcast joined them, their weapons holstered. Citizens emerged from hiding places to walk alongside their queen. By the time they reached the surface, hundreds of Zinthara surrounded Zerathia and Marcus, not as captors, but as supporters. The crowd grew larger as they walked through the streets toward the palace. Thousands of Zinthara, their exoskeletons shifting through colors that represented the emotions they were just beginning to understand. Some were crying an experience so new and strange that they did not know whether to be frightened or amazed. Others were laughing, a sound that had not been heard in Zinthara cities for millennia. "Your Majesty," a citizen called out, "I felt something when I heard your words. Here." She touched her chest. "What is this feeling?" "It is called hope," Zerathia said gently, stopping to speak with her. "Hold on to it. But the Council says emotions will destroy us, that we will return to the wars of the past. The wars happened because our ancestors did not understand how to balance emotion and logic." Zerathia explained. "We will not make their mistakes. We will learn together." Marcus watched as more citizens approached, asking questions, sharing their experiences. Zerathia answered each one with patience and honesty. She was no longer just a queen giving orders. She was a leader connecting with her people on a level that had been impossible before. They reached the palace gates to find them open. Inside the courtyard, the remaining loyalist guards stood in formation, weapons ready. But Zerathia walked forward without fear, and Marcus stayed close by her side. Advisor KX then emerged from the palace, flanked by the other council members. His exoskeleton was the traditional, neutral, gray, emotionless, calculating, cold. "Your Majesty," he said, his voice flat. "You have violated every principle our civilization was built upon. You have contaminated our people with dangerous emotions. You have thrown our empire into chaos. We have no choice but to remove you from power and begin immediate treatment to reverse this catastrophe." "No," Zerathia said simply. "This is not a negotiation. You are right. It is not. Zerathia stepped closer to the council members. You speak of contamination, but I speak of liberation. You speak of chaos, but I see awakening. You speak of catastrophe, but I feel hope for the first time in 3 centuries. She turned to address not just the council, but the thousands of citizens who had gathered in the courtyard and the millions watching through broadcast feeds across the empire. The High Council believes that eliminating emotions made us strong, but they are wrong. It made us hollow. We became efficient machines. Yes, we avoided the wars that emotion-driven decisions once caused, but we also lost something essential. We lost the ability to truly care about each other, to find joy in beauty, to feel compassion for suffering, to love. KX Than's exoskeleton flickered slightly, a sign of emotional stress even in him. And what happens when emotions lead to conflict again? When anger causes violence? When jealousy breeds hatred? When love itself becomes a source of pain? Then we will face those challenges with both emotion and logic working together. Zerathia said. We will make mistakes. We will stumble. We will sometimes fail. But we will be truly alive while we do it. She looked at Marcus, and her exoskeleton glowed with that golden color again. This human taught me something in just 10 days that 300 years of logic never could. He taught me that caring about someone else more than yourself is not weakness, it is the greatest strength in the universe. He taught me that fear and courage can exist together. He taught me that love is worth any risk. Marcus felt his heart pounding. Around them, the crowd was absolutely silent, waiting. I am not asking my people to abandon logic, Zerathia continued. I am asking them to be complete, to use their minds and their hearts together, to think and to feel, to be what our ancestors were before fear made them choose only one path. She turned back to the council. I will not step down. I will not submit to your treatment. And I will not allow you to suppress the awakening that has begun. But I will also not force this choice on anyone. Those who wish to remain purely logical may do so. I will not take that freedom from them. One of the council members stepped forward, and Marcus saw something he never expected. The member's exoskeleton was shifting colors. Pale blue. Uncertainty. Your Majesty, the council member said, and her voice wavered slightly. Here. She touched her chest, mirroring the gesture the citizen had made earlier. It was uncomfortable, frightening, but also warm. Is this what you are talking about? Yes, Zerathia said softly. That is emotion awakening. Do not be afraid of it. The council member looked at her colleagues, then back at the Queen. I do not know if this is right or wrong, but I want to understand it. I want to learn. One by one, other council members began to show similar signs. Their exoskeletons flickered with colors. Their voices carried inflections they had suppressed for lifetimes. Only KX then remained rigidly gray, emotionless. This is madness, he said. You will destroy everything we built. No, Zerathia said. We will transform it into something better. KX then looked around at the citizens, the guards, even his fellow council members. He was alone in his resistance, and even he could calculate those odds. Very well, he said finally. But I will have no part in this experiment. I choose to remain as I am. That is your right, Zerathia said, and I will respect it. You may keep your position if you wish, or you may retire with honor. The choice is yours. The tension in the courtyard broke like a wave. Citizens began cheering a sound so rare and strange that many of them stopped in surprise at hearing it from their own throats. Guards embraced each other. Even some council members were showing signs of relief, of hope, of cautious joy. Marcus found himself pulled into an embrace by Zerathia. Her exoskeleton was warm against him, pulsing with colors he had learned to read. Happiness, relief, affection, and something deeper. We did it, she whispered. We actually did it. You did it, Marcus corrected. You had the courage to stand up for what you felt was right, even when everything said you should not. I learned that from you. She pulled back to look at him. Marcus Chen, you came to my empire as a diplomat, but you gave me something far more valuable than any treaty. You gave me back my heart. Around them, the celebration continued. The palace courtyard filled with Zinthara experiencing emotions for the first time in their lives, learning what it meant to truly feel. Some were overwhelmed, others were confused, but all of them were alive in a way they had never been before. Commander Park's voice came through Marcus's communicator. Marcus, we are seeing reports from across the Empire. The awakening is spreading faster than anyone predicted. Entire worlds are choosing to embrace emotions. It is beautiful and chaotic and absolutely unprecedented. What about conflicts? Marcus asked. Violence? Surprisingly little. Most Zinthara seem more interested in understanding their feelings than fighting about them. Though there are reports of some interesting developments, apparently several couples have already formed. Romantic relationships. First time in Zinthara history in thousands of years. Marcus looked at Sirathia, and she looked back at him. The question hung between them, unspoken but understood. Your Majesty, Marcus said formally, then smiled. Zirathia. I came here to negotiate a treaty between our peoples, but somewhere along the way, I found something I was not looking for. What is that? Someone I could fall in love with, even though every logical reason said I should not. Someone brave enough to risk everything for what they believed in. Someone who taught me that the impossible is only impossible until someone has the courage to try. Zirathia's exoskeleton glowed brighter than Marcus had ever seen it. Cycling through every color in rapid succession, the visual representation of overwhelming emotion. I do not fully understand all these feelings yet, she said. But I know that when I am with you, I feel complete. I know that the thought of you leaving causes pain I cannot calculate away. I know that this emotion you call love is the most illogical, impractical, wonderful thing I have ever experienced. So what do we do about it? Marcus asked. We make a new treaty, Zirathia said with a smile, the first true smile Marcus had seen on a Zinthara face. Between our peoples? Yes. But also, between us. A partnership built not on logic or strategy, but on something much stronger. She took both his hands in hers. Marcus Chen, will you stay? Will you help me guide my people through this transformation? Will you teach us about emotions while we teach you about logic? Will you be my partner in creating an empire that honors both heart and mind? Marcus looked around at the celebrating Zinthara, at the empire being reborn, at the woman who had risked everything to feel. The answer was easy. Yes, he said. To all of it. Yes. Tous. They stood together on the palace steps as three suns set over the crystal city, painting the sky in colors the Zinthara were learning to appreciate for the first time in millennia. And as Zirathia leaned her head against Marcus's shoulder, a gesture of affection she was still learning, they both knew that this was just the beginning. The galaxy would learn that humanity's greatest gift was not technology or weapons, or even diplomatic skill. It was the reminder that emotions, love, courage, hope, compassion, were not weaknesses to be eliminated, but strengths to be embraced. And it all started with a queen who stopped running from her heart, and an ambassador who taught her it was worth the risk. The end.